leader of the Uhuru movement and the International African Revolution. I want to thank everybody for coming on. And today, we want to talk about what has captured, obviously, the imagination, stomachs, and pocketbooks of many people in this country, especially African people, and maybe even something that is achieving some notoriety in other places around the world, because in various countries through the European empire, if you will, have begun the same thing, and not just in Europe, but other countries have initiated this stimulus thing that trying to respond to this what is the immediate economic devastation caused by the colonial virus, or COVID-19, as they call it. And I say immediate because I continue to remind brothers and sisters and comrades that we are looking at a hell of an economic crisis in the whole world economy, much of the world economy, China being an exception, and some economies are more closely tied to China being exceptions of sorts. But the fact is that this economic crisis that has begun the process of reconfiguring the world began even before COVID. And we saw in this world how the US government has, which is nothing but an instrument for the capitalist class, the colonial capitalist class, the bankers and insurance corporations and the big money. This government has been concerned for a while about the growing economic capacity of China, and with that, the growing influence China is having in various places around the world that impacts the economic and political, diplomatic interests and future of the United States and much of Europe. But so we saw, the whole thing with the trade war, and even before COVID said, don't catch an airplane, Boeing 737s had made that statement, don't get on that airplane. And that caused a major downturn because Boeing is a major player in the world economy, and certainly in the United States. And they had to ground those airplanes, those 737 MAX airplanes. And this, despite the fact that Trump tried to rescue them by saying, just rebrand it and keep flying, that kind of thing. But the point is that the United States initiated this trade war with China because China was growing in a very serious way. And its growth was something that challenged the domination of America, American corporations, American big money everywhere. And so the US had begun doing things to try to frustrate China, actually using its influence to have the daughter of a major tech company arrested in China, in Canada, had begun doing all kinds of things to make it difficult for Chinese-based corporations to exist in the United States of America. So this downturn, this crisis of the world economy had already begun, and China is making major inroads, the fastest growing economy on the continent of Africa, where US and European powers, the prior colonial powers had been dominating that terrain as well. China and contesting the United States and various other places where major trade routes, especially oceanic trade routes. So all this stuff was challenging the existing configuration of the world economy and causing serious problems. Bankruptcies were happening in certain areas of the economy. So the COVID-19 is not the origin of the crisis. It's not where the economic crisis began, but it is real, what has happened with COVID. It is real. I should say, even when I speak about the contradiction inside the United States, the whole world economy was in trouble. The imperialist system was in trouble. The entire social system that is based on colonial domination and extracting wealth and value from oppressed peoples around the world was in trouble, to the extent that we began to see, it was one of the things that election of Trump Trump was a response to that reality. It even impacted on white people, how white people were able to see themselves, precisely because the old flag never touches the ground. US patriotism is based on this assumption of America better than anybody else, which means white people in America better than anybody else, that kind of thing. And then when you began to see this great fear emerging around Chinese economy, the great fear that begins to reveal itself of other countries being able to defy the supposed power of the United States. You saw that not only in places like Venezuela, like Iran and Iraq, but also the emergence of Russia as a contending force in many ways. So, and then China, and all of this contributes to how white people were able to see themselves, because white people have defined themselves. They created themselves, and then they created us, that is to say Africans and other people, as a poor reflection of who they are. And so to the point that other people are not being who we are supposed to be, then white people have to ask questions about who the hell they are. And of course, who the hell they are boss. They are on top. They are the big bullies of the world. They carry big sticks and that kind of thing. But what has been revealed, and recently, even before COVID, that the United States was not being respected in that fashion. They have been fighting for more than a generation against impoverished people in Afghanistan and unable to defeat them. They have this ongoing struggles throughout the Middle East. They've got a defiant Iran saying that we'll do it the way we want to do it. They've got Venezuela, as much as they've done to try to starve the people in Venezuela. They've got the Venezuelan people doing it the way they want to do it, defying US power. That's the reality that much of the world has seen, and American people, which is say white people, have had to experience, which challenges their own sense of who they are. This whole notion of the superior beings on the planet Earth, inhabitants of the shining city on the hill. All of that has been challenged before. It's leading to a spike in the death rate of white people, suicides, drug addictions, this kind of thing. Then comes COVID-19, which is one of the reasons that people like myself were suspicious to see this coronavirus emerging in China, because we knew that the United States was doing everything it could to smash China, to smash its influence, to disrupt this economic success. Even Pompeo, the guy who was functioning as Secretary of State, was running around the world telling people not to have any relationships. Other countries don't have any relationship with China. So we were suspicious of that. But what had happened, of course, we were suspicious that what the US government was saying, that China being the origin of it, and if it were the origin of it, we were able to believe what had been put forth in some quarters, that it was due to a US involvement in a laboratory in China that we saw the emergence of this COVID-19. But it's there. And we got some hints of it in late 2019. We were getting some hints of it, that it was there. And then what began to happen is that the US government downplayed it to the point that even the noble Fauci came out and said that people didn't need to wear masks. It's a serious thing, but you don't have to wear masks. And in some of them were even saying that masks could contribute to the ability of people to get the COVID, because it gave a false sense of security. Some of you may remember that. And then, of course, later Fauci was to say, as I really assumed to be the case, that he was saying we don't need a mask because the US government couldn't produce the mask. So it had everybody running around going for themselves, or trying to go for themselves, buying up toilet paper, buying up paper towels, buying up hand sanitizers, and trying to find masks, and then making masks, doing anything they could. So it was an individual exercise, because there is no healthcare system. Everything is based on capital, based on profit, and what have you. And to have said at the time that you need a mask would have sent people out looking for those masks, looking for the gloves, looking for the protective gear, not being able to find it, and therefore seeing the government as a fundamental problem, not being able to satisfy the needs of the people, to take care of the needs of the people at a very dire moment. So COVID is here, and we heard about it early, despite the stance that the United States government took early on, and of course that's being attributed now to Trump. And but we began to see the whole supply lines being disrupted around the world. Capitalists trying to move products from one place to the world, ships being lined up at ports because they couldn't dock. The ships carrying resources couldn't dock. And because they couldn't dock and unload those resources, it also affected the productivity in various places around the world, causing crises in production, so that what people would have been producing, there is no basis for producing it now, because you can't get it to the market. And if you can't get it to the market, if you don't produce it, that meant job losses would happen there. This became part of the problem. And of course, this is where we are now, and with that problem magnified many times over. So an economic crisis, and this country and the global empire is in a state of crisis all the time. And you see it over and over again, one crisis rolling into the other crisis, and each time the crisis getting more profound, deeper than it was the last time. And of course, the reason that the economy is in a state of crisis all the time is because it's a world capitalist economy. And capitalism was born from colonialism, from the colonial slavery of Africa and other peoples all around the world, and it has locked us, the peoples of the world, into these economic and political structures that are designed to protect this system of exploitation, taking wealth and resources from others. And this is what fills up the refrigerators and fills up the bank accounts and fills up the resources of the people in Europe and white people in this country and other places. So because the basis of the success of the economy itself is the enslavement and colonization of the peoples of the world, that starves the peoples of the world, that every time there is a crisis of any sort, the capitalist systems, the capitalist governments, the capitalist leaders try to take care of the white people, the colonizers of the world, by taking more from those of us who are colonized. And in addition to doing that, because it's a world economy, what happens is other countries are losing too, because the people are struggling to take back our resources. And as they're losing, that means that there are fewer resources available for all of them, which creates another kinds of problem and crisis, because the potential for war, struggle among them, even as they talk about having to do something to us in order to continue to extract value. So now with COVID, the natural crisis built into a system that rests on a foundation of slavery and colonialism. You must remember that. When you talk about capitalism, you're talking about a system that is based on a foundation. It rests upon a pedestal, a foundation of slavery and colonialism. Without colonialism, there would be no capitalism. Without colonialism and the enslavement of Africans and other peoples around the world, the system wouldn't work, which is why you see the US and other countries in a perennial state of war to try to keep people locked into this death-dealing, death-wielding social system globally. So the crisis happens. And when the crisis happens through, that is to say, it's deepened, it's sharpened, it's escalated through the COVID crisis, the colonial contradiction, the colonial virus contradiction. And people have been thrown out of work. People are in a tremendous state of uncertainty, insecurity. African people have always been in a state of uncertainty and insecurity. We live like that all the time, but this is a new phenomenon for a whole bunch of white people who, as I said, had always assumed that to be a white American, it meant that everything was going to be all right, more or less. And so, but now it's not everything all right. And they've had to go through this, white people, over a number of years now, with a growing, creeping sense of insecurity coming into the white world. And then with the sharpness the death of the crisis, that economic crisis that has come in the wake of the COVID contradiction. We see all kinds of things occurring in this country. One such thing occurring in this country was Donald Trump. One thing that preceded it, by the way, was Barack Hussein Obama. And what I mean by that is we saw a sector of the ruling class select Obama and put him in place as a one response to the crisis of the peoples of the world, taking back our stuff. So he became white power in a black face. He became America's way of saying, look, this ain't white power stealing your stuff. See, there's a guy called Barack Hussein Obama who leads this process. And so you should have some kind of confidence in America. And it's also a way that they were able to stifle or smother or subdue the struggles of Black people in this country who've never been for the wars and the kinds of things that the US was able to do under Obama's leadership. It was able to smother and stifle that kind of resistance and struggle because nobody wanted to affect negatively the brother, as he was characterized. And of course, he wasn't our brother. He was the brother of the capitalists who were exploiting us, and he worked for them. So here, now we have this crisis that's unfolded with Trump being an example of the crisis, and Trump rallying the white people with an explanation that, if not stated publicly, is implied. That the problem that you got, white people, is all these other people, whether it's raping Mexicans who are illegals coming across the border, raping and killing good white people, whether it is Black people who are involved in a fight to get our rights, violating the laws and things like that around the country, whether it is an intervention by China, who is also not white, who is impacting on the economy. You've got white people here. And I'm not trying to be insulting, but the truth of the matter is that the American public is the most politically backward population in the world. They're white people. And I used to say next to South Africa and next to the white people who live in this place they call Israel. Because white people have always been able to take it for granted, didn't have to understand anything about the world, didn't even learn about new countries until this government, the United States government, found itself warring and killing somebody in some places they had never heard of before. This is a thing that fed their interest in any kind of geopolitics or what was happening to other people around the world. So now there's this situation, and this crisis, this economic crisis, is deeper and deeper. People ain't got no money. People can't feed themselves. People are driving up now in RVs and bombing on Christmas Day. People are threatening to kidnap the governor in some countries and some cities, states in this country. People are arming themselves clearly and publicly, holding mass demonstrations against people who are not white. And then the deeper crisis is this depth of the political crisis is also expressed in the fact that this election for Trump, which he characterized the campaign as being about make America strong again. Everybody understood it was make America white again. The white people understood it was inferred. They didn't have to act like they knew what he was talking about. And the Africans understood what it meant. So you see this greater polarization that's caused as a response to this whole crisis, not just the crisis about whether or not there's going to be $600 versus $2,000 versus $1,500, but the whole system is in a state of crisis. It didn't start with COVID. COVID just brought it up to serious public view, deepening and sharpening it so that it's impossible to get around it no matter how you might try. So here we are, and it is a systemic problem. It is a systemic problem that is being obscured and in many ways because nobody is saying that there's anything wrong with the system. It is being defined as something wrong with Trump, something wrong with the Republicans, or from that side, something is wrong with the Democrats. The Republicans are stingy. The Republicans don't care about human beings, and the Democrats are spendthrifts and almost, if not absolutely, Marxist, communist, socialist, that kind of thing. These are buzzwords that mobilize white people in this country and many Africans in this country. It terrifies Africans. Some Africans have been frightened to say anything about socialism because this is how Trump is defining the Democratic Party and anything progressive. And somehow people are confusing progressiveness and with Bernie Sanders or other people who are running around calling themselves democratic socialists. But the reality is none of that is socialism, and it wouldn't matter anyway, because before they began defining the contradiction of socialism, if you remember in recent history, they were defining the problem as terrorism. And anybody who went against the interests of the United States government, anybody who had another kind of policy was some kind of terrorist. Because why were they terrorists? Because what people were doing scared white power to death. Whether it was in the Middle East or whether it was in Oakland, California, or Houston, Texas, it was something that white people were frightened of and the government frightened of, especially when you see the emergence of the most critical revolutionary sector of the population inside the United States, that is the sleeping giant African people. And so they would obscure this. And so the problem is not the system. The problem is not colonialism, not this racism garbage, because they want you to keep saying the problem is racism. The problem is that white people don't like you. That's profoundly significant to white people as a part of their whole identity, to be the oppressor, the killer, the kidnapper, the robber, the rapist, and notwithstanding all of that, people want to be like you. So that's how the problem has been defined. As the thing of Trump being a bad guy, the Republican Party being a bad guy, and then the Democratic Party being the good guys who maybe the good guys who want to bring in something that approximates socialism or some left kind of politics. They've created this concept of their own, for their own benefit, of what is the left and what is the right, and all of it is colonialism, whether it's left colonialism, right colonialism, conservative colonialism, liberal colonialism, radical colonialism, reactionary colonists. They're all colonizers. African people live under colonial domination. So the colonialists have their own setup. They have their own government. And this government is to protect the interests of the system, notwithstanding what they say about working for the people. The government is to protect the interests of the system. And the system benefits a certain sector of the population. The system benefits that sector of the population that gave more than $7 billion each to the Republican and the Democratic candidate the election cycle that is ending right now. That's who the system serves. Otherwise, why would somebody give a bunch of people give $7 billion to Biden, $7 billion to Trump, because it's their system. And they're engaged in this process of seeing who's going to be able to dominate the system most effectively in terms of their specific kinds of interests. And they're interested in that because with the economy experiencing the kind of crisis it's experiencing now, we see even major brands declaring bankruptcy. They're having to lay off people. They're not bringing in the kinds of resources they were able to bring in before. It's a major crisis for them. So here is where we are. So now we have a situation where the US Congress, the 535, more or less of them, voted for what was supposed to be a stimulus package. And the stimulus package is something that most capitalists understand is needed. And the capitalists understand is needed because they have in this country what they call a consumer-based economy. The economy is not based on people digging coal and making cars and doing all these other things of production. It's a consumer-based economy. It's an economy based on what people can buy. Buying some 70 or more % of the economy is organized around consumerism. Your ability to go out and spend some money that would go to the corporations, go to the banks, go to the major supermarkets, much of it ended up paying for ads in newspapers and ads on Facebook and ads on all of these other things like that, which shapes the way they will tell the story as well. And so here is the thing. This money is drying up for people. And they are having to deal with that in the Congress. And they know that the people need some kind of money. They need money for the reason I just stated. And they also need money that suggests to the people that they're going to be taken care of. And you don't have to pick up a gun. You don't have to pick up a torch to burn down the White House. You don't have to do any of those things because we're going to take care of you. So this is what's happening, and this pretext of the interests of the people in a capitalist system organized on profit, organized on production for the market, organized around stealing value, resources from Africa, from the Middle East, from all of the Americas and things like that. So now this is what we're looking at, and these people now pretend to have some kind of interest in dealing with the people, and of course they don't. And so the thing is that they come forward. The Congress agrees that they're going to put forth $900 billion, offering something like $600 per month to people in the country. And they were going to offer a $600 stimulus check that could send you out to Walmart or send you out to some other place where you would put some money in the economy that would go back to the corporation, go back to Walmart, go back to the banks, go back to the ones who fund the creatures who are in the Congress in the first place. And then what happened is that they did this. Even people from Trump's administration, they did this despite the fact that they knew Trump didn't want that. They wanted to go higher than that. Why would Trump want to go higher than that? Because he's just lost the election, for one thing, because he may be planning to run in 2024, because he also wants to maintain influence among masses of white people, thereby giving him leverage and influence over the politics inside this country, whether he's in the White House or not. Trump needed that. He needed that was helpful for him. And also it was going to put the Democratic Party in a box too. And what they would declare as some kind of deficit spending would be dropped in the lap of a Biden administration. So that's part of what it was about. And then what we've seen is the Republican leadership, especially this guy, Mitch McConnell, he comes out in opposition to that. He's the Senate leader. He's the Republican Senate leader. And he came out in opposition to that when Trump put it forward. And the Republicans in general were opposed to it. And then Trump kept fighting it and pushing it. And then the House had its own meeting and determined that they will accept that. They agree with that. It should be $2,000 instead of the $600 that had come from the congressional vote in the first place. And they're saying that because the people need the money. And of course, the people do need the money. But the major thing here is that both of these camps are talking about the money like it's their money. And you've got the Republicans saying something about how they philosophically committed to little government, and they don't want to have budget deficits, spending, and this kind of thing, which is nonsense because the Pentagon got something almost equal to the amount of money the whole $900 billion. The Pentagon got almost another $900 billion. They don't mind deficit spending when it goes to pay the Pentagon that's going to be killing people all around the world, trying to maintain the status quo. They don't mind that. It's deficit spending when it might make a difference in the people. Why would that be a factor? And one reason it would be a factor, despite the contradiction that we just talked about in terms of needing people purchasing things, needing consumers, is that by keeping the people unemployed, which means that they can't buy houses, they can't buy cars, they can't buy furniture, they can't buy refrigerators and this other kind of stuff. But what they do is place a major impact on the willingness of people to do anything they can to make a living. So you can pay them nothing or almost nothing if you want to. And there's the way the economy is moving more and more towards service industry, that would make sense. So you got people who are working in fast food joints trying to get $15 an hour. And of course, Bernie Sanders, this darling of the liberals, the so-called socialists, phony socialists, is saying that he's for $15 an hour. So they're trying to make it so that everybody in the country could make as much as the worker at McDonald's. And I believe the workers at McDonald's ought to make a lot of money, but I don't think $15 should be the standard. I don't think the $15 is good enough for people working at McDonald's. These are the forces who are critical to the economy in the first place. And so you've got this battle going on. And they're sitting atop your resources, your money, while they do this. And they're talking about budget deficits and things like that, as if the money came from Jesus, as if the money came out of their pockets. Here you got all of these people. They got free health care. They got protection. They got security of a sort that you will never know, and they will have it for years and years and years. And yet the people are losing their ability to pay their rent, take care of their children, and things like that. And they are talking about somehow they're engaged in this debate about what the people should get. On the one hand, the other hand is all the money that we are looking at, that we are talking about, come from the people and from the resources of stolen from people all around the world. This is where the resources come from. And the vast majority of that money, as quiet as it's kept, as a consequence of value that is concentrated in the economy of slavery and colonialism. That's your money that they're talking about. And you are happy. I know you're happy because I've seen you on Facebook. I've heard you in the streets. You are so happy to get that $600. But starving people, of course, would be happy for $600. The fact is, it won't even make a month's rent payment for us. So the problem that we've got is the social system itself. Take the money. Take the money. But also, you have to see that as a down payment on reparations. We can't even call it reparations, because if everybody getting, they can't be repairing the damage done to African people. We say, take the money because you need to live. And we know that one of the consequences of not having money coming into our communities is that we have to find our own methods of employment. We have to find our own methods of feeding our families, our children, and et cetera. And too often, the method that we come up with results in us taking from each other, fighting from each other. That's why they have the police everywhere in our communities to make sure that we're not fighting against and with the people who stole the money from us, who are responsible for the condition our community is confronted with. So $600, $2,000, they don't even begin to approach the amount of value that's been stolen from Black people. And we can't be satisfied with the $600 or the $2,000. Take it all. Take all of it that you can get right now. Take it all. And if you find another ways that you can get it in the name of reparations without attacking our people, take the money. Because we need the resources, we need the reparations, we have a right to live. More than anybody, we have a right to live based on what they've stolen from us as African people in Africa and what they've stolen from us in the various places they've dispersed us around the world. So we want the money. But we want more than that too. We want reparations. We want payback. We don't give a damn what Biden says. We don't care what Trump or McConnell says. You owe us. We're coming to get everything that is owed to us, not just here. That's owed to us globally, because Africa is not going to be in this position of trying to play catch up. You stole everything from Africa. You stole me from Africa, where I should be working on the continent of Africa. I'm working or trying to work here so that now I can get $600 or $1,200 or $2,000 payoff, which is nothing. When the whole economy rests upon my backs and the misery of African people here and around the world, and Africa itself is starving as a consequence of what Europe has done. It went to Africa, it took us from Africa, it took Africa from us here and Africa from us on the continent of Africa, and it's making money hand over fist. And now the problem that they have is that China is getting some of the money too. And Turkey is getting some of the money too. And India is getting some of the money too. And other countries are getting some of the money too. And you and I, Africans, we ain't getting nothing, but maybe $600, maybe $2,000, when the whole pot should belong to us. When I say the whole pot, I'm talking about resources here that they owe us. And you can't even quantify the amount of value that they have taken from Africa, the amount of value that they owe us, specifically here in the United States and as a part of the international African community. They owe us, they owe Africa. We want all those resources back because we know it's our food that's in your refrigerator. We know that it's the bread that should be going into the mouths of our babies are going into the mouths of white people, the colonizer, etc. That relationship has to be destroyed so that African people can have what we need to produce life for us, for ourselves, once and for all. $600 is not going to determine that. $2,000 is not going to determine that. And we have to move, because what has happened and what happens to us all the time, we find ourselves in this situation where we have to say, well, let's take the 2,000 or take the 600 because we gotta live. And it's true, we gotta live. But you can't accept that as the final. What you have to do is have the long view. You have to begin to hear me. You have to begin to hear the African People's Socialist Party. You have to begin to hear the Uhuru movement. You have to begin to understand and listen to the philosophy of African internationalism so that you can have the long view. And if you have the long view, we know that if we collectivize our energies, if we come into our own party, our own organization and what have you, increasingly we grow our strength, our power. We create marketplaces as we do right now in our movement in various places. We begin to renovate our own communities. We begin to grow food and in our own communities and what have you. Here in the United States and around the world, we begin to challenge all those authorities that stand between us and capturing control of our capacity to feed, clothe, and house ourselves. And our politics revolves around the recognition that that's what we have to do, whether we're on the continent of Africa, whether we're in Bermuda, whether we are in Guadeloupe, or whether we are in Haiti. Our responsibility is to take power over our own lives, to fight against colonialism as a part of a collective whole of African people. We're African internationalists. And our future is connected. There's no way for us to separate our future as African people from each other. Our power is in that unity. And that's the thing that would give us the ability to work toward a meaningful conclusion. Because even the $600 or the $1,200 that they're talking about, where does it come from? It comes from what they've stolen from us. It comes from what they steal from Africa on a regular basis, what they steal from the Americas on a regular basis. And the crisis that they're experiencing that they started before COVID was people in all these places I just mentioned had begun to take back their resources, and that is responsible for the economic reconfiguration of the world. So what we're saying is that don't drink the Kool-aid, take the money, but don't be fooled into believing that one is better than the other because one says $600 as opposed to $2,000. They're both looting us. They're both responsible for our misery, and they both are part of an institution that could not even exist without their cooperation. And when I say the institution, I'm talking about the United States government. I'm talking about how it looks in terms of Congress, how it looks in terms of what they call the legislature, how it looks in terms of what they call the judicial branch as part of a same system of oppression and exploitation. So what I'm saying here is that we have to fight for the long haul. Take what you need now. Do push-ups, do your exercise, live long, and get everything that you need to do that. Take care of your children in the process of doing that, but while so doing, prepare to take it all. Prepare. Join the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement. Go to apspuhuru.org, apspuhuru.org, and be able to have the long view so they won't trap us by being able to give us a crisis every 30 days or every 6 months or every 4 months and say, this is what your problem is. Our problem is that white power dominates our lives, steals all of our resources, control not only our existing life, control the future, and also control our history so that we don't have any idea, most of us, of where we came from. I don't mean where we came from in some kind of abstract, proud, historical way. I mean where we came from in terms of forces that created the economy of the world, that had civilization, created the economy of the world, and now we are drowning under control of these barbarians. But the crisis is deep for all of them. They are in deep crisis, and this struggle is happening in the Congress today. This issue of $600 versus $2,000, it represents their problem, their crisis. Take it, and if you can make them give $2,000, $5,000, $15,000, you can come and do that as well. But don't be satisfied because they can't give us enough money to pay the debt they owe us. So what we're saying is reparations. Reparations now. Go to apspuhuru.org. That's apspuhuru,